Hello, this is Cloud Tech Academy, and my name is Kevin Jackson. Today's class is on implementing cloud computing governance. This is a very important aspect of any transition, and key to it is understanding the IT Information Library, or ITIL, because ITIL is the baseline for IT service management. And in the end, cloud computing is all about service management. We're going to talk about governance, standardization, implementing shared services, the importance of an IT service catalog, and IT patterns and solutions. The Information Technology Infrastructure Library is the most widely adopted approach for IT service management in the world. ITIL structures IT service management into 4 domains. Infrastructure, which is a technology component directly related to an IT service. Supporting services, the underlying infrastructure required to operate the customer-facing IT services. The IT service itself, which is the service requested by the customers. Each IT service is implemented using the corresponding IT infrastructure. The IT service, therefore, complements a set of IT infrastructure components by adding service definitions such as the service level agreement information and cost. So where's the fourth, you're asking? Where is the framework itself? Standards and processes that orchestrate all of the activities required to deploy an IT service is the ITSM framework. This is not a collection of infrastructure components, but rather the framework used for the deployment, operations, and decommission of IT services. The ITSM framework ties the infrastructure, supporting services, and IT services together, and it provides the needed operational functionality. IT services are presented to potential customers. They, in turn, need to be able to order them. The ITSM framework should not be confused with the deployment of IT infrastructure required by a service. The focus is on orchestrating all of the activities required to deploy that service as opposed to a collection of infrastructure components. If the customer requests a Red Hat Enterprise Linux Gold service, it is not only about deploying the operating system image using Red Hat Satellite, but it's also about modeling the service in the configurations management database, configuring the event and impact management, making sure that all the corresponding operating level agreements are rolled up into the promised service level agreement and reported in a service view on a customer-facing portal. The ITSM framework ties everything together into a coherent service offering. This diagram depicts the major components of an IT service management. It can be used to help you identify the processes and interfaces as they exist in your own organization. IT governance defines the organizational structures, decision rights, workflow, and authorization points to create a target workflow that can optimally be used by a business entity in order to align that entity's resources with the goals and objectives of the business. Effective governance clearly articulates the desired outcomes Who is accountable and responsible for these outcomes? What are the escalation criteria or triggers to move a decision to the next level? And what metrics will be used to monitor that the system is delivering on the desired outcomes? IT governance is used to avoid a mismatch with organizational IT implementation capabilities and resources. It allows for the identification and management of both the demand-side requirements and the supply-side responsiveness. Standardization is critical to gaining operational efficiency, reducing overall cost, and reducing the time required to deliver new mission capabilities. A small number of non-optional constraints is often the most effective means for achieving agile governance. Strong enforcement of a lightweight set of requirements is a recurring theme in successful modern IT management. If this is not possible to globally enforce due to organizational constraints, it becomes even more important to demonstrate success via well-scoped pilot projects that can showcase the new model. Organizations with large geographic footprints sometimes suffer from a lack of standardization in process, IT asset management tools, and IT project scheduling tools. Variations typically prevent an enterprise-level view of IT assets. Establishing such an enterprise view is typically the first transformational step towards ITIL. The goal is to provide transparent, efficient, and consistent processes and services. Some enterprise operating models allow for excessive variance in hardware, operating systems, and applications across the enterprise. This practice is typically driven by line of business funded IT implementations, with IT serving under a cost center model and government-funded acquisition processes. This is uneconomical and contributes to operational fragility. Variations depict an internal customer-mandated model versus an internal customer-focused commercial best practice approach. In a customer-focused environment, the service provider provides standardized services that are made available to be consumed or used by all internal customers. These offerings are focused on the target audience for the provided service. This allows them to provide these service offerings at a very inexpensive rate on demand to those customers. Effective IT governance enables standardization, interoperability, and a shared services environment. Shared services standardize IT level of effort and decreases the overall IT system complexity. It also enables broader use of commercially available cloud-based services. The Enterprise Service Catalog is a customer-facing representation of the technology provided by the enterprise IT infrastructure. It should provide all of the information that a customer needs to review, select, and order an IT service. Most efficiently developed using a bottoms-up approach based on the technology actually deployed by an organization. This represents a mapping of technology to IT services, and it requires standards in the technology space, both in terms of architecture and delivery. Without this standardization, a mapping across the IT external and internal boundary is impossible. A failure to set and enforce standards across the entire enterprise technology space, both in terms of architecture and delivery, would be contrary to the exact purpose of IT service management. The identification and use of repeatable operational patterns has proven to be an invaluable problem-solving tool. Effective ITSM requires enterprises to organize the IT infrastructure space into patterns and solutions. Patterns are basic components that are combined into solutions. This process allows for the separation of the components mapped to the IT service and the ones deployed and operated by the technology towers. The separation is the foundation for the introduction of an ITSM framework, and it helps align organizational structures. This table defines the key characteristics that all patterns should reflect. Adherence to these characteristics is what makes standardization tractable. Each pattern and solution is documented by the use of standardized artifacts. Pattern artifacts are classified into 9 categories. These are description, which describes the individual patterns and solutions by use of a standardized diagram and a short textual description. Life cycle, which defines the organization's specific life cycle for a pattern. The life cycle is generally different from the vendor life cycle in that it lags the vendor's technology. A vendor's product may need to be customized to meet internal standards. Provisioning. Provisioning describes the technical provisioning of a pattern. The provisioning process that's required by a pattern is covered in the artifact processes and runbooks. Configuration management, which documents a pattern's requirements with regard to the implementation in the configuration management framework. Security, the technical and process aspects of a pattern security requirement that must be met during the deployment and operate phase. Monitoring, functionality required for monitoring the operational status of the pattern. Processes and runbooks, these are one-time activities related to a pattern. The runbooks focus on normal and any anticipated abnormal activities associated with the specified pattern. Both the process descriptions and the runbook should cover the complete life cycle of a pattern, including provisioning, operations, and decommissioning. Financial, this is the technology-based cost for capital expenditures and operational expenditures. This does not include any IT service-oriented cost items such as a system administrator support, as they can vary depending upon the associated IT service offering. And blueprints. Blueprints are detailed descriptions of the technical implementation of patterns. For the engineering teams, the blueprints define how a pattern is to be developed for customers, and they include detailed technical information about the pattern. Continuing, the description of the standardized solution describes the individual solution by use of a standardized diagram and a short textual description. Solution artifacts include non-functional requirements. There are two categories of non-functional requirements. The first is capabilities, what features, functions, etc. do the infrastructure components provide, and qualities of service. These non-functional requirements decorate the infrastructure component's capabilities. For instance, a network card provides basic network connectivity. However, two network cards in a network interface bonded setup provides similar capability, but with a higher state of resiliency or throughput. Both recovery time objective and recovery point objectives are listed for failover within a data center as well as failover between data centers. Another artifact that's required are the patterns itself. Which patterns are required to implement a specific solution? Continuing with solution artifacts, life cycle. The solution life cycle is based mainly on the life cycle of the individual patterns. Provisioning. The provisioning of a solution generally consists of an aggregation of the provisioning requirements of individual patterns. Configuration management. This documents a solution's requirements with regard to the implementation in the configuration management framework. Security. The security of a solution should be built into the individual patterns and not added on a solution level. And monitoring. The monitoring of the overall solution is essentially a collection of the individual pattern monitoring functionality. Resilience. The description of all possible technical failure scenarios. This includes a description of the failure, how the failure is detected by monitoring components, and what remediation is possible. Solution, process, and runbooks, a collection of the corresponding artifacts on the pattern level. Financial, once again, aggregated from the patterns, the technology-based cost. And blueprints. This artifact lists the blueprints associated with the solution. The end-to-end implementation of the service architecture consists of patterns, solutions, and IT services is the most critical ITSM principle. This allows for the identification of an IT service and its related solutions and patterns throughout the whole life cycle, covering deployment, operation, and decommissioning. The deployment of an all-encompassing service user portal that allows for the ordering of IT services as well as the presentation of service-oriented dashboards and reporting is also important. The dashboards and reports are targeted at customers and the operations center. All IT services are deployed as a set of patterns. You must implement effective IT governance across the entire enterprise. You need to establish and enforce IT technical and process standards, work towards achieving a shared services operating environment, identify and document your business or mission relevant infrastructure patterns and solution artifacts, develop and deploy an enterprise IT services catalog, and deploy a service users portal that reflects your standardization and your governance processes. Other governance activities you should consider include platform layer standardization, common standardized delivery patterns, IT automation, an enterprise service catalog and enhanced service delivery, automated process workflow for all of your business processes, the collection of metrics and the analysis of those metrics, continuous monitoring of all major events, including security and capacity management events, and the commodity purchasing and unified capabilities across your entire enterprise. Effective IT governance will erase any cloud computing transition problems. The advice presented in this class will deliver considerable value if followed. Thanks. Hope to see you again soon. Look at the security assessment requirements, compliance requirements, and take a quick look at the Trusted Internet Connection. So FedRAMP is the Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program. This is a government-wide program that provides a standardized approach to security assessment, authorization, and continuous monitoring for cloud products and services. FedRAMP was the result of close collaboration with cybersecurity and cloud experts across the federal government. The Federal CIO Council and its working groups, as well as private industry. The goals of FedRAMP is really to accelerate the adoption of secure cloud solutions through the reuse of assessments and authorizations. It is supposed to increase the confidence and security of cloud solutions, achieve a consistent security authorizations using a baseline of agreed upon standards. It's designed to ensure consistent application of existing security practices, increase the confidence in security assessments, and increase automation and near real-time data for continuous security monitoring. FedRAMP's program benefits include increase in the reuse of existing security assessments across all government agencies. It saves significant cost, time, and resources. It improves real-time security visibility and provides a uniform approach to risk-based management. It enhances transparency between government and cloud service providers and improves the trustworthiness, reliability, consistency, and quality of the federal security authorization process. The FedRAMP Joint Authorization Board will review the security assessment package based on a prioritized approach, and it may grant a provisional authorization. Federal agencies can leverage cloud service provider authorization packages for review when granting an agency ATO. This saves both time and money. The objective of the Joint Authorization Board is to define and regularly update FedRAMP security authorization requirements in accordance with the Federal Information Security Management Act of 2002 and Department of Homeland Security guidance. The JAB also approves accreditation criteria for third-party assessment organizations, also known as 3PAOs. 3PAOs provide independent assessments of cloud service providers' implementation of the FedRAMP security authorization requirements. The JAB establishes and publishes priority queue requirements for authorization package reviews and review authorization packages for cloud services based on the queue. Continuing with the objectives, the Joint Authorization Board will grant provisional authorizations for cloud services that executive departments, agencies, and other government organizations can use as an initial approval in granting security authorizations and the accompanying authority to operate. They ensure that provisional authorizations are reviewed and updated regularly and work with the FedRAMP Program Management Office to notify departments and agencies of any changes. The JAB will also establish methods for input to the FedRAMP security authorization requirements from all executive departments and agencies. FedRAMP security authorization requirements will include a baseline of security controls, privacy controls, and controls selected for continuous monitoring from the NIST Special Publication 853. The JAB will work with the Department of Homeland Security's National Protection and Program Directorate to further develop continuous monitoring standards to include near real-time monitoring and continuously verified operating configurations, as well as coordinated security incident response and threat notification. The FedRAMP security authorization requirements will require review by qualified third-party assessment organizations. The JAB will approve the criteria necessary to qualify 3PAOs according to their independence and their quality management specifications. They will also look at the technical competency criteria based on an evaluation of knowledge of security authorizations to ensure that the requisite skills and expertise to conduct such an assessment. The FedRAMP assessment process is initiated by agencies or cloud service providers and begins a security authorization using the FedRAMP requirements, which are FISMA compliant and based on the NIST 853. CSPs must implement the FedRAMP security requirements on their environment and hire a FedRAMP-approved 3PAO to perform an independent assessment. The JAB will regularly review accreditation criteria, and according to the FedRAMP policy memo, the JAB will provide the accreditation criteria to approve 3 PAOs to the FedRAMP program. An important responsibility for the JAB is to review authorization packages provided by the PMO on a rolling basis and in a timely manner. The JAB will publish the priority queue requirements on fedramp.gov in order to ensure transparency into the process. It will also regularly review the queue requirements and update them as necessary. The JAB will provide the priority queue requirements to the PMO and will prioritize cloud systems for their review. In granting provisional authorizations for cloud services, Executive Department and agencies could then issue authority to operate. The JAB will grant provisional authorizations by evaluating the packages. The JAB may or may not issue a provisional authorization based on the overall evaluation of artifacts provided and the resulting determination of the risk level of a cloud service provider's environment. The authorization could also include additional risk statements or conditions based on a review of the materials. The JAB will ensure that provisional authorizations are reviewed and updated regularly. At a minimum, the Joint Authorization Board must invite all Executive Department and agency CIOs to one JAB meeting a year in order to provide input to the FedRAMP security authorization process. The JAB will work with the FedRAMP Program Management Office to establish methods for regular input by all executive departments and agencies. Members of the JAB include the Department of Defense CIO, the Homeland Security CIO, the CIO from the General Services Administration. Their general duties and responsibilities include the designation of JAB technical representative, the issuance of joint provisional authorization decisions, the resolution of any issues as needed, and the definition of FedRAMP security authorization requirements. Additional responsibilities of individual JAB members include the Department of Homeland Security's responsibility for leading the government in operational aspects of federal agency cybersecurity for information systems under FISMA. They must manage the FedRAMP's continuous monitoring for compliance to FedRAMP. The GSA CIO also has additional responsibilities, which include the management and guidance of the FedRAMP Program Management Office, the establishment of standard FedRAMP templates. They must act as a liaison between agencies, cloud service providers, and the JAB. They manage all program communication and outreach, provide contract language templates and sample service level agreements, and they standardize agreements to government information exchange between the executive departments and agencies and the FedRAMP PMO. The JAB technical representatives are composed of designees from the Department of Defense, the Department of Homeland Security, and the General Services Administration. Their general duties include providing subject matter expertise to implement the direction of their respective JAB members, support of the FedRAMP office in defining and implementing the provisional authorization process, and recommending provisional authorization decisions based on the assessment of the respective JAB members. The FedRAMP PMO will work with the JAB to create a process and framework for federal agencies to meet FedRAMP requirements. They also facilitate the provisional authorization process and implement a conformity assessment program to qualify and approve 3PAOs. They also prioritize reviews of cloud systems according to the Q requirements approved by the Joint Authorization Board, and they conduct outreach and education on FedRAMP. Other important contributors to the FedRAMP program include the National Institute of Standards and Technology and the Office of Management and Budget Policy. The CIO Council publishes and disseminates information from the FedRAMP PMO and JAB to executive departments and agencies. They also will publish the standardized baseline of security controls, privacy controls, and the controls selected for continuous monitoring. They will coordinate the vetting of controls and requirements and publish all FedRAMP documents. All FedRAMP JAB decisions must be agreed to by a majority of the JAB authorizing officials. Security authorization requirements, 3PAO criteria, and priority queue requirements are also reviewed. Provisional authorization reviews and updates and all methods for input to security authorization requirements are also under the jurisdiction of the JAB. Per the Office of Management and Memo Budget, all low and moderate impact cloud services leveraged by more than one office or agency must comply with FedRAMP requirements. This is applicable to all executive departments and agencies that are procuring commercial and non-commercial cloud services. It applies to all cloud deployment models as well as all cloud service models. Assisting government-wide and agency-specific efforts to provide adequate, risk-based, and cost-effective cybersecurity is a key responsibility for the Department of Homeland Security. They coordinate all cybersecurity operations and incident response, and they also provide appropriate assistance where necessary. They develop the continuous monitoring standards for ongoing cybersecurity of federal information systems and develop guidance on the agency's implementation of the Trusted Internet Connection Program with cloud services. Executive departments and agencies have critical compliance roles and responsibilities as well. They must use FedRAMP when conducting risk assessments, security authorizations, and in granting authority to operate for all executive departments or agencies that use cloud services. They must use the FedRAMP PMO process and the JAB-approved FedRAMP security authorization requirements as a baseline. They need to ensure that applicable contracts appropriately require the cloud service providers to comply with FedRAMP security authorization requirements, and they must establish and implement an incident response and mitigation capability for security and privacy incidents for cloud services in accordance with DHS guidance. Executive agencies and departments must ensure that the acquisition requirements address maintaining FedRAMP security authorization and that relevant contract provisions relate to the contractor review and inspections are included. Consistent with DHS guidance, they must require that the CSPs route their traffic such that the service meets the requirements of the Trusted Internet Connection Program. They also must provide to the Federal Chief Information Officer on an annual basis a certification in writing from the Executive Department or agency CIO and the Chief Financial Officer, a listing of all cloud services that an agency determines cannot meet FedRAMP security authorization requirements with appropriate rationale and proposed resolution. The CIO Council will publish and disseminate information from the FedRAMP PMO and JAB to all executive departments and agencies. Referenced before, the Trusted Internet Connection Program has the objective of optimizing and standardizing the security of individual external network connections that are currently in use by federal agencies. This includes all connections to the internet. This is being done to improve the federal government's security posture and incident response capability through the reduction and consolidation of external connections, and it provides enhanced monitoring and situational awareness of external network connections. Its components include the reduction and consolidation of external access points, the management of security requirements for network and security operations centers, and the establishment of a compliance program to monitor department and agency adherence to TIC policy. This is applicable to any agency that's designated as a TIC access provider and all commercial carriers that have been designated as managed trust IP service providers. All federal executive civilian agencies that are procuring network services or using TICAP services must also comply with the TIC program. FedRAMP lays the foundation for a secure government community cloud. Please take one or more of our other FedRAMP classes in order to learn more. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.